Madagascar is a raft broken free from Africa, a Noah's Ark which, through the ages, has weathered the storms of its history to reach us today. The plants, animals, and human cultures and traditions endemic to it are more fragile and threatened than ever, faced with the voracity of today's world.
Oh no, the city? I'm not interested. It even makes me want to hide. I've never been there, but from what I hear, it's full of cars and strangers. I'd keep a low profile there. No, really, it scares me, and I'm happy I'm far away from all that. In fact, if I had to go live there, I wouldn't survive.
For me, it's an island. It's a wondrous island. An island where you truly find an exceptional endemicity. I was joking with my students a week ago. We were talking about the Bible and the Garden of Eden. I told them, you're looking too far away. The Garden of Eden is Madagascar.
The sea is a gift from God, and God created the Vezo to go to sea. As long as we live, we need to go out to sea. The sea is what keeps us alive. The fish, octopus, and turtles we catch enable us to live. And we use the money we earn to buy everything we lack. A few years ago, I lost my grandfather at sea. He was hunting underwater and got attacked by a shark. He died from his wounds. My father also died at sea. He went down with his pirogue one stormy day. We found them both a week later. Since then, I know the sea doesn't do any favors. The sea is filled with danger. Even if I didn't want my children to go to sea, I wouldn't be able to stand in their way. They're Vezo, see? There's no work for them on land. Personally, I can't imagine not going to sea. The sea is what feeds us, my children and my whole family. I think my sons will be like me. And even if it costs them their lives, they'll still go out to sea.
La différence, en fait, de cette région,
The difference between this region and other regions in Madagascar
le peuple Vezo,
is that the Vezo are the only people without land territory.
territoire terrestre. À peu près,
They have just about a kilometre or two along the coast.
c'est le seul peuple.
They're the only ones.
Les autres, ils ont
The other peoples all have their territory.
La mer, c'est une
The
zone
sea is an area of refuge, so they didn't get a chance to go into the forest.
d'accéder dans la forêt. Mais
But they do have the territory of the sea.
qui est la mer ou dans la mer.
At sea, they find the freedom to live.
You really want to know why the forest is so important to us? Quite simply because it's our mother. It's home to our ancestors. We grew up with it. We've always lived in it, and we don't know any other way. The forest is what we know best. It's like a part of us. If we harm the forest, it's exactly as if we harmed ourselves. It's our sustenance. And even if we sometimes venture away from it, we always go back because it's our whole life.
Praying at the foot of a baobab is a way of requesting permission to enter, of thanking nature for her generosity, of asking forgiveness for what they are about to do, because the Mikea know that everything here has meaning.
This has been my land since I was a child. I know this forest like the back of my hand. It may be a dry forest, but it's very beautiful. And if nothing happens to it, if we leave it alone, the forest can feed us all, like it's always done. If we pray and respect it, we'll harvest its fruits. The forest grows fast if we leave it alone.
Wow.
The true Mikea who live from hunting and gathering in the forest don't need the life that we have. They don't need money to live. They participate in the life cycles of the forest. They're a species like any other, so they live off the forest. They really live freely.
Reni kwanine rula hinjairu daladala. Reni kwanine rula hinjairu mamulava. Ahi kwa vawa ningenjairu teadrala. Ahi kwa vawa ningenjairu ratirate. Nene, 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 nene. Nene, 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 nene. Reni kwanine rula hinjairu teajala. Reni kwanine rula hinjairu mamulava. Ahi kwa vawa ningenjairu teadrala. Ahi kwa vawa ningenjairu ratirate.
It's a country which has its own way of functioning and its own way of life. There are other resources in Madagascar, resources that are invaluable and that can't be measured by the world's criteria of poverty or development. I work with conservation NGOs and the like, and I quit. Why? Because the local populations, the people who are the true guardians of this cultural, material and immaterial heritage, no longer feel as if the land is theirs. In fact, we realized that the more strategies of conservation and development that we implemented to develop and fight against poverty, the more this endemicity was lost.
A baobab is more than a tree. It is like a pachyderm, a living totem, a symbol of longevity. Baobabs are the patriarchs of this land. The forest spirits are their guests and seek refuge in their shade. Anyone who has ever been lucky enough to approach one of these giants of the plant kingdom, to find themselves in their presence and feel how powerfully they are rooted, understands the respect they naturally inspire.
Philosophically speaking, the earth isn't for sale. So if someone turns up from another country and asks for land, we give it to them. We offer it, but we don't sell it. That was the philosophy of our elders.
This is Vezo land here. When we arrived, we were warmly welcomed. Everyone was very nice to us. We respected their customs and went to see the Vezo village chief to explain our situation, how we had to flee and all that. They took us in and showed us this area where we could build our homes and settle our families. They called our village Ambolofoti. It's a Vezo name. Not Mikea. Everything went smoothly with no conflict. Before, we lived peacefully. There was no theft, no aggression or violence. We really lived in peace. We'd make our meals, tell stories around the fire. The children would play, sing, dance. We were really happy. Then one day, bandits came into the forest to steal our zebus. They were ethnic groups from the east, highway bandits, and we became afraid. We sought refuge deeper in the forest, but they found us. They shot their rifles to frighten us off. Finally, it became too dangerous, so we decided to move the entire village to the edge of the forest, closer to the sea. Here, we're starting to see more foreigners and even white people, which wasn't the case before when we lived in the middle of the forest.
If you ask me, it's deforestation that's driving them out. Because we wonder when we set up development projects in Madagascar, who is this development project for? We have to ask ourselves the question, is it a development project for these people? People who didn't ask for what we call development, a faceless development, an empty shell, in fact? And development NGOs are appearing all over Madagascar and have funding. Development projects are a business like any other.
It is hard to measure the gap that separates the Mikea from the rest of the world. The Mikea are able to live somewhere no one else can, because they know how to read a language in nature which no one else speaks anymore. Today, they live with the heritage that's been handed down from their ancestors over the centuries, and their hope is to pass it on to their descendants in turn. This permanence and continuity must be seen more as a strength than a weakness, because they are the bearers of exceptional knowledge about their environment.
I often say that Madagascar lives simultaneously in the 17th century, the 18th century, the 19th century, and also in the 21st century. So actually, depending on the place, we live at different speeds. Some people live internationally, some live locally, and some live between the two. It's all very complicated. That's why if we set up development strategies, we must truly understand what kind of society we're putting in place. What speed are we at? If we introduce development at international speeds, it works. But if we put that same development to work at local speeds, it's complicated.
The Mikea's discretion and their ability to survive despite their hostile environment has fueled legends among other ethnic groups. We hear about them, but never see them. It is said they can find all sorts of honey in trees, know where to dig for tubers full of water, and are unparalleled hunters. The Mikea are experts of small things, the observers of signs that are invisible to the rest of the world. For many, they remain a mystery. Some even think they've completely disappeared.
We don't see ourselves as remarkable. You know, our only resources are the honey we gather and the tubers we find here and there. And when we find them, we eat them. But if we can no longer go into the forest, we're lost. Where will our children go, and our children's children? We don't know what to do anymore. We aren't the only ones, you know. There are other Mikea. But if we no longer live in the environment our entire culture depends on, can we still call ourselves Mikea? Maybe now we must forget this way of seeing. The Mikea are coming out of the forest, forgetting their old way of life. We're adapting as best we can.
For the Vezo, formerly nomadic coastal people who've grown sedentary by gradually foregoing the siren song of the sea, these pirogues are slowly losing their splendor. The vessels, which were once synonymous with freedom, are increasingly left on the shore and are used more and more in shallow waters. For these sailors, it's a paradox that is about to shake up an entire way of life. Because what remains of a sailor who no longer goes out to sea?
I don't know how this whole seaweed thing got started, but one day we were told to grow it. The Vezo are fishermen, obviously, but there are fewer and fewer fish, you see. I remember when I was small and we'd go fishing, we'd bring back all sorts of fish. Now there are more people to feed, families are large, and there aren't enough resources. There aren't enough fish anymore. Some foreigners came from Volondriac and encouraged us to get into seaweed. They saw how fishing was more and more of a struggle, and they showed us how to grow seaweed. Apparently, the foreigners need this seaweed, so they buy it from us. It's good for us. No, the seaweed isn't for food. We grow it for the money it brings. And with that money, we can buy all sorts of things, like rice, cooking oil, and all sorts of staple products. Actually, we were forced to grow seaweed, and I say forced because fishing was getting harder and harder. We didn't have enough to eat. Before, we used to go out fishing, but now this activity is all we have left. We need to adapt. My husband doesn't go out fishing anymore. Now we have to tend to the seaweed. We have to stay together for the seaweed.
There are a lot of things we're not allowed to do here. Seems like the foreigners are the ones making the decisions now. Here, grow seaweed, do this, do that. That's the work they've given us.
Until now, no one had ever prevented a Vezo from going anywhere. But lately, the government and certain NGOs have set up reserves, places we're not allowed to go anymore, and periods when fishing is not permitted. It's not the same anymore.
We have various things that aren't allowed, various taboos. But when the Christians came, they told people, there are no taboos. You can grow what you want. You can eat what you want. So people began breaking the traditional taboos. Then suddenly, the conservation NGOs came along with another lesson, that now we must protect by outlawing certain things. It's the reinvention of traditional taboos. I was with a UNICEF representative whom I work with here in Toliara, a woman from UNICEF. We traveled through the north together, and she said, look at the poverty in Madagascar. I told her, Mom, these people aren't poor. Let's go and ask them how poor they actually feel. So we went and asked the man, where are the poor people here? And he pointed to the poor people next door, who lived in the same sort of house. They were the people the man considered poorer than him. Then we asked, what about you? Are you poor? And he said, no, I have heard of 100 zebu. So in terms of the notion of poverty, everyone has their own definition. That's what we need to do before we set up the fight against poverty.
Avant de mettre en place cette...
We need to ask ourselves, what is the poverty we're going to fight?
Certain regions are inaccessible by modern vehicles, making the zebu cart the means of transport which is most adapted to the land. Travel and movement is aligned with the animal's steps, which changes people's relationship to time. For the Malagasy, there is solar time for harvesting, lunar time for ceremonies, and zebu time for daily life. In many ways, the zebu sets the pace of life in Madagascar.
I think the zebu is the vital element in a Malagasy's life. Vital because when you're born, you need a zebu. When you die, you need a zebu. When you get married, you need a zebu. When you get circumcised, you need a zebu. The zebu is present throughout your entire life. It accompanies us for our whole lives.
The zebu has been anchored in the culture of Madagascar for centuries and holds a central role even today. Though used as a work animal, it is mainly the animal's sacred powers that make it indispensable. Socially speaking, the zebu guarantees recognition and prestige. Spiritually, it is the intermediary between the living and their ancestors.
The zebu brings a lot of status. It's like having a child. Sometimes our dead parents contact us and ask for a zebu to be sacrificed in their honor. It's to commemorate them. With a zebu, you can make all sorts of requests. Zebus are very, very important for us Vezo.
A family who doesn't have a zebu is socially fragile because they cannot participate in the rituals required by tradition. But for important events, or in the case of a problem, the community organizes itself so no one gets left out.
Often, ancestors contact us during our sleep. We see their faces, and they ask us to make offerings, like rice or rum. Sometimes we're asked to sacrifice a zebu, and they may even threaten us. And if by chance we don't do what they ask, we could suffer misfortune.
The healers, the Ombiasi and the Douani, they're the ones, along with the patriarchs, who run the community. They play the role of mediators in society. They're the ones who ensure society still functions.
If there is a serious case when someone is afflicted by an ill that resists treatment, they are declared bilo, in grave danger. To evacuate the evil spirit that possesses them, the community gathers and proceeds with a ritual that lasts several days, blending music, chants, prayers, and many offerings to the ancestors. Because in Madagascar, everything that happens to the living is inevitably connected to the ancestors. The ceremony generally ends with the zebu sacrifice.
La principale menace,
The main threat is development.
c'est le développement. C'est ça, en fait,
That's
qui va faire
actually what will
disparaître
slowly make this traditional culture disappear.
cette culture traditionnelle.
Tambi tambi ravale, tu te katitsini ali raikwe. Tambi tambi ravale, tu te katitsini ali raikwe. Belina timanu inda izuke belina malankira firaikwe. Belina timanu inda izuke belina malankira firaikwe.
Il faut qu'on arrête en fait de dire qu'on est pauvre. Il faut qu'on
We need to stop saying we're poor. We need to engrave in our children's minds that we have all the resources we need to show the world that poverty does not exist.
La pauvreté, ça n'existe pas. Parce que ça
Because it's a state of mind.
il faut qu'on
We must try to gradually remove it from our vocabulary,
petit à petit dans nos
this notion of poverty,
la notion de la pauvreté.
which is an imposed
La
poverty,
pauvreté imposée
the poverty that stems from
et
development.
du développement.
We aren't used to being so close to the sea. Soon, the honey harvesting period will begin. The buds will come, and we'll have to return to the forest to celebrate this important time for us. We have to go to the forest, remove our clothes, and coat our bodies with honey. That's our tradition. But we're afraid of the foreigners and forest rangers who lurk everywhere. It's a custom among us Mikea, but we're not going to be able to do it. If they see us, they'll accuse us again of burning the forest. Among the Mikea, it's taboo to burn the forest. We know that, and we only use what we need for preparing food, building homes, or defining a living area. We never cut for the wrong reasons. A Mikea never burns the forest. The oldest among us have already passed on. We're the last generation of Mikea to know these things. There's so much knowledge that's already been lost, so many customs we no longer teach.
The cosmos, stars, the zodiac, the rhythm of nature, and the ancestors. Here in Madagascar, we are particularly sensitive to the way all these elements influence each individual's fate. So, in order to make the right decisions throughout life, one must know how to invoke and interpret a whole combination of signs. This is the realm of Ombiasi, healers-seers who know what to do by reading seeds and the patterns they form on the mat.
True Mikea are those who still live in the forest. There are only about 100 of them left. But the rest mix with other groups and are absorbed by the Masikor, or else by the Vezo. So in fact, if that continues, they're going to disappear. And there'll be only Masikor and Vezo left. We're standardizing them, even when it comes to Fombas, our traditions and customs. We're standardizing everything. It's as if traditional society is a hindrance to the establishment of progress. We must keep this practice. It's the only one that makes us Malagasy. What we need isn't development, it's human well-being, individual well-being. We don't need sustainable development, we need sustainable well-being.